ये बजट more infrastructure, more investment, more jobs की नई संभावनाओं से भरा हुआ है.
Government opts for a budget which focuses on India's growth in the long run.
The productivity-linked incentive in 14 sectors for achieving the vision of Atmanirbhar Bharat has received excellent response.
Continuity chosen over populism. No election appeasement found in the budget.
Introduction of a central bank digital currency will give a big boost to digital economy.
India will have its own digital currency now. RBI will roll out the digital rupee. 68% of all of India's spendings on defence will happen inside India. Revolutionary move to push Make in India. No changes in tax slabs. Government says enough packed in for middle class in other schemes. Opposition says big snub. And the nation watches election coverage on Republic, biggest newsmakers and the best coverage on Indian television once again.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. I have 3 hours of solid post-budget coverage lined up for you. And in the next 1 hour, we'll be talking in the next 1 hour to cabinet ministers. We have Hardeep Singh Puri lined up for you, ladies and gentlemen, on what is being described roughly as a future-ready budget. We're talking about the blueprint budget for India at 100. Why is it that the government is looking at a 25-year horizon? Is that practical? At 9 o'clock, nation, not election. Why is the opposition frustrated? Did they want a political angle to the budget? And personally, I believe that if you look at the track record of the government over the last 7-8 years, you would see that the government has moved the budgetary process outside of the political process. Yet it's being talked about as a Jumla, Pegasus spin, zero-sum budget. We're doing a fact-checking of that at 10 o'clock tonight. And ladies and gentlemen, before I go across to our first guest, the finance minister has, I think, opted for continuity in India's growth story. In her shortest budget presentation so far, she's laid out the plan for perhaps the next decade. From 60 lakh new jobs to be created under the PLI, Productively Linked Incentive Scheme, in 14 sectors, to big incentives for startups. There is a thought in this budget. Yes, many are asking why there is no change in personal income tax rates. We'll talk about it. For farmers, there is a 2.37 lakh crore outlay for direct payment to 1.63 crore farmers for procurement of wheat, paddy. It's huge. 2 lakh crore rupees additional credit for micro and small enterprises to be facilitated under the Credit Guarantee Trust for MSMEs. 18,000 crores has already been allocated for the completion of 80 lakh houses in 22-23, which is under the PM Awas Yojana, which is massive. 68% of capital procurement budget earmarked for domestic industry in 22-23, which is up from 58% in 2021. And that alone is perhaps the biggest move to make India self-reliant. Now, there are several takeaways, but before we get into the conversation this evening, here are some of my biggest takeaways from the budget this morning.
Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman has hailed the next 25 years as India's Amritkal as she laid out the budget 2022. From SOPs for electric vehicles to defence, the budget is aimed at providing further impetus to rescale pre-pandemic levels.
By achieving certain goals during Amritkal, our government aims to attain this vision. They are complementing the macroeconomic level growth focus with a microeconomic level all-inclusive welfare focus, promoting digital economy and fintech, technology-enabled development, energy transition and climate action, and relying on virtuous cycle starting from private investment with public capital investment, helping to crowd in private investment.
In a big push to the drone industry, the government has also decided to promote drone as a service.
To enable affordable broadband and mobile service proliferation in rural and remote areas, 5% of annual collections under the Universal Service Obligation Fund will be allocated. This will promote R&D and commercialization of technologies and solutions. Artificial intelligence, geospatial systems and drones, semiconductor and its ecosystem, space economy, genomics and pharmaceuticals, green energy and clean mobility systems have immense potential to assist sustainable development at scale and modernize the country.
Furthering PM Modi's vision from digital connectivity, the government will auction 5G spectrum by the end of this year.
Required spectrum auctions will be conducted in 2022 to facilitate rollout of 5G's mobile services within 2022-23 by private telecom providers.
In line with Atmanirbhar Bharat, 68% of defense budget will be earmarked for domestic industry.
Atmanirbharta in defense. Our government is committed to reducing imports and promoting Atmanirbharta in equipment for the armed forces. 68% of the capital procurement budget will be earmarked for domestic industry in 22-23, up from 58% in 21-22.
With an inclusive approach and higher public spending, the budget hopefully furthers India's growth story in 2022. Bureau Report, Republic TV.
You know, one thing about Mr. Hardeep Singh Puri is that he's always on time, and I'm sorry to keep you waiting, Mr. Puri, for the last 5 to 7 minutes. So I saw this morning when the cabinet meeting happened, one of the first people, cabinet meeting starting at little after 10:10, I saw him enter before 10 o'clock, and I think that was the alarm for everyone else to come in. So, Mr. Puri, thanks for coming in. Good to see you on Budget Day Live, and it's been a good day for you. I mean, one of your many ministries, Housing and Urban Affairs, saw 40% rise in expenditure allocation. You must be very pleased. You must be extremely pleased. What's the reason behind this increase in allocation?
Well, first of all, Arnab, thank you for having me on your show. As usual, you are being kind, saying nice things. Insofar as my ministry is concerned, I can tell you that we had very ambitious targets right from the time of 2014. I mean, in the 10 years between 2004 and 14, we had a total expenditure on the urban rejuvenation during those 10 years of 1,57,000 crores. In the 7 years of the Modi government, or rather the 6 years, because the programs really started in 2015, the expenditure had already gone up more than 7 times. It was over 11,50,000 crores. In this budget, there are some very significant announcements. The one that you are referring to is that during the fiscal year 22-23, we will have 80 lakh additional houses, but both in the Grameen sector and in the urban sector, to be made available to beneficiaries, out of which the total amount allocated is 48,000 crores, which I should point out for my urban ministry is 28,000 crores. So we are very happy with that. It will see the fulfillment of the Prime Minister's dream that by the year March 2022, every Indian, no matter where he or she lives, should have a pakka roof on his or her head. It should have a awas with a toilet, with a kitchen, with a gas cylinder and all modern amenities. And the title of the home should be in the name of the lady of the house or co-jointly. Now we are almost completed that, some residual stuff left, and I think the announcement made today, but for the additional construction during 22-23 will complete that. I'm also very happy that the Finance Minister, the Honorable Finance Minister, has actually adopted a very forward-looking, visionary approach. I mean, as you know, in 1947, when we became an independent country, 17% of Indians lived in urban spaces. 17% of a population of 350 million. By 2030, when the UN completes its Sustainable Development Goals, we expect 600 million people to live in urban spaces. That will go up to 800 million later. If India's population is 1.6 billion, I hope it's not that much, that will be 50%. Now you need to re-image your cities. You need to look at the intellectual coordinates. What kind of demographic shifts will take place? What are the new amenities you have to build apart from the smart city? So a high-part committee will be established. Then in the universities, where there is a focus on urban studies, 5 of those will be declared centers of excellence, and you will have 250 crores made available. So that plus, I must confess, I am thrilled with the 35% increased target for capital expenditure. You know, both the ministries that I am privileged to deal with, Housing and Urban Affairs and Petroleum and Natural Gas, already have very ambitious targets on capital expenditure, and we're hoping to complete 100% for both ministries in the fiscal year. But to have a 35% increase, that is what growth is all about. That is growth anchored in development. That is the real development. So this sets the trend, I think, for the next decade.
Now, Mr. Puri, there's a lot of inflation. You know, why couldn't rather taxes for the salaried class be cut? The economy is doing so well. People of the country have contributed, they have sacrificed, and they have adjusted, and they've responded to every call. And the middle class has, the salaried class has. They're asking tonight, why would our taxes not cut? Why is it so status quo is there? We're not MPs. Our salaries don't increase by 55% like it happened in 2018 for members of parliament. So given the inflation index, why weren't there any tax reliefs for the salaried class adjusted to cost for inflation?
Arnab, let me just share with you that I'm very happy about the buoyancy in the tax collection. The very fact that in the month of January, the GST collection has gone to a record of 1,41,000 crores. This is for the last 4 months, an increase every month. So that is a very good sign. If you see where we came from, where we went. The last year was a very difficult year, the last 2 years. We had to provide 3 meals in a day to excess of 80 crore of our brothers and sisters because of the pandemic. We had to make 172 crore vaccine doses available free to our citizens. Yes, taxes, it's the legitimate aspiration of a person of the middle class like myself, hoping that taxes will come down. But tax slabs had already come down. And I'm sure if we don't have these other expenditures to cater to in the coming time, that is an issue that this finance minister would like to address. But let me say another thing. There are benefits going to the middle class, to the economically weaker section, to a lower income group in many other ways. I can count those out. You know, when the government reduces excise on petrol by 5 rupees and on diesel by 10 rupees, again, it's the same middle class consumer we have in mind. When we add to public transport, to the metro system, it's the same middle class consumer.
Felt.
Equally, we only provide food to people.
It's not felt. It's a bit obscure.
You know,
it's not obvious.
How you define the common man?
I'm saying that they wanted that special gesture. They haven't got that special gesture.
Let me. Arnab, my sense is that before the last budget was presented 1 year ago, you had a situation where the government had to present 5 mini budgets in order to deal with the stimulus and all the other issues. I'm very confident that if we can retain the same levels of revenue growth, and if our other, we have added in many ways, urea subsidy has gone up, agricultural credit has gone up. It's a question of dealing with different segments. I'm sure that the class you are referring to, you referred to an MP salary. With due respect and all humility, I can tell you the lowest salary I've ever earned in my life, and I have a long career of about 45 years in public life, is as a member of parliament. But I agree with you. There are expectations, and as we grow, but the middle class You know, the DNS allowance which is paid to government servants, that is one thing. Maybe in the times to come, the Honorable Finance Minister will address providing relief too on the tax front by reducing the slab. But we are already at a pretty reasonable level compared to other countries of our size and level of development.
Okay, one quick question before I let you go. Mr. Puri, the Finance Ministry has slashed the disinvestment target by 55%, even though Air India got cleared. Is this an admission that divestment will not bring in the required impetus to push the economy further? Simply put, is the slashing of the disinvestment target an admission of defeat, Mr. Puri?
Not at all, Arnabji. It is a very positive message which is being sent. I had the privilege of serving as the Civil Aviation Minister from the time of 2019, June to July of 2021. In those 2 years, we did the work on the disinvestment of Air India, and I'm glad subsequently I saw my friend Amitabh Kant's picture flashing.
Yeah.
You can have a discussion with him.
Yeah.
The very fact that we got Air India done and disinvested, and the very fact another entity has been disinvested today, and I am minister in another ministry where there is a major entity up, and there are other targets that the finance. It is a realistic, doable. The numbers earlier were wishful thinking. They represented an aspiration. This one is a readily doable target, and I'm confident that the success for Air India and the other entity which has been disinvested today will be the harbinger of many good privatizations to come.
Okay. Well, Mr. Puri, always a pleasure to speak to you, and thanks for being candid as always. That's Hardeep Singh Puri.
Thank you very much, Arnabji.
Thank you. Now to a very high-profile panel, ladies and gentlemen. Delighted to have on the screen, you see, the unstoppable Suhail Seth. On his left, the unputdownable Niranjan Hiranandani. On his left, the ever-optimistic Chandrajit Banerjee. On his left, the solidly pragmatic Rajneesh Kumar. Personally, you know, Rajneesh Kumar is an interesting personality on this panel because he's seen through right every rocky phase from the NBFC crisis and also. And there's Kamal Bali, you know, looking all cheered up. I think he's really happy. He's going to sell a lot of vehicles, I think. He's managing director and president of Volvo Group. What a fantastic panel. What a fantastic panel. Kamal, why are you looking so pleased? Let me start with you. You know, are you looking at your revenue collections for the next 25 years?
Arnab, good evening and thank you for having me on this show. Arnab, I'm very delighted with the progressive, imaginative and growth orientation of the budget as it touches basically all socio-economic segments while embracing technology and modern tools of governance. And I think the big thing about the budget is the highest ever capex of $100 billion, which is up 34% over last year, aimed at creating and improving our logistics infrastructure through PM Gati Shakti National Master Plan, as well as social sectors of health, education, and focus on the aspirational districts as well. And at the same time, they have tried to keep the fiscal deficit pathway on track, absolutely. Coming to our sector, I think the push on logistics, it will positively influence our logistics cost, reduce our logistics cost, reduce the structural challenges which we used to have on account of logistics and the inflationary pressures which we used to get. And therefore, this will make Indian manufacturing more competitive and make use of the global rebalancing of value chains which is currently happening, make India ready for that, and play therefore a bigger role in the overall manufacturing output. And this will, I think, open up private investment in a much bigger way and then create more jobs and therefore kickstart a virtuous cycle. So I think I'm very, very delighted on that, on the future of mobility. I think it is completely redefining the future of mobility. And the other part is focus on sustainable solutions in public procurement policy with due credence to clean and green technology, circular economy, quality, instead of just the L1 approach we used to have in the past.
Yeah.
So I think these are very, very great, I think, welcome steps. Then finally, the push to public transport, urban infrastructure, and interoperable battery swapping policy, which are going to really give a big EV sector in the country.
Absolutely.
So overall, very, very different the budget.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for your opening remarks. And with us on the panel, he's chairman of BharatPe these days, which is one of the fastest growing fintech companies. And he's been former chairman of the State Bank of India and on board of several companies and organizations. Mr. Rajneesh Kumar, last month, you had said, and I quote, that India needs an overall investment of 100 lakh crore in 5 years to make us a $5 trillion economy. We're proposing to spend a total of 39.45 lakh crore in FY23. Is this enough, in your view? Because I think we have a magnificent situation as far as the fiscal deficit is concerned.
100 lakh crore is national infrastructure pipeline.
Okay.
And for that, this time the capital expenditure budget is about 10 lakh crore. And then the balance would be coming from the private capital and the banking capital. So if we are able to spend 20 lakh crore in a year, then in 5 years it adds up to 100 lakh crore. So I think it is a very clear maths. So sometimes what happens that the difficulty in implementation and execution where we are unable to spend the money provided for, and I think this happened in the current year also. So I think in terms of allocation, 10 lakh crore is a very good number, and rest should come from the public sector and banks. But we should spend that money in this year. Then we are really, we would be doing a nice job as far as the infrastructure creation in the country is concerned.
Chandrajit, thank you, sir. Chandrajit Banerjee is the Director General of the Confederation of Indian Industry, which is India's apex industry organization. Now, Mr. Banerjee, let me put it to you differently. Everyone says what's nice about the budget, and CI and FICCI are always happy with the budget. I haven't seen a single budget in which CI and FICCI have any problem. What would you have wanted more? What has it missed?
No, it's just not. It's not just actually trying to be, only positive, but it is a good budget. It is a futuristic budget. You and I have talked together earlier about an India at 75. This budget talks about India at 100. So I think there are steps taken towards a $9 trillion economy. I would imagine by 2030, I see an India of 40 trillion by 2047. So I see some steps taken. We can always say that there could be much more that could have been done. I see a lot of steps taken towards ease of doing business, which we have been talking. The trust factor, which is coming between the Indian business and the government, and they are not shy about it, which is very important to generate growth, to generate employment. I think we will see more of that coming, and one can go always to say that there could be much more done on ease of doing business. There is steps taken towards improving the competitiveness of India, the competitiveness of Indian industry, the logistics work which has begun. A lot, you can say that, well, I mean, there could have been, let us be reasonable. I think one could say that, well, could the disinvestment targets could have been higher, 65,000 crores. But I think we have to be also reasonable. Let us be reasonable and achieve something rather than promising and under-delivering. I think that's a key thing that I see in this budget. It's not just to praise, but I see a lot of opportunities being created, or opportunities for the private sector. We are already 75% in terms of capacity utilization, and with this type of front-ending by the government in terms of the fiscal, the stimulus that I'm seeing being given, the horsepower coming from public investment and capital expenditure. I see a lot of opportunities getting created, and I see a lot of opportunities getting created in terms of connecting India, through the infrastructure infrastructure story, connecting the coastal areas, connecting hinterland, connecting rural India. So I see all of that to be very positive, very future oriented. A lot of tech in the budget. If you really look at sustainability, if you really look at green, circular economy, these are really futuristic points for India now to start working on. Yes, it's only begun. We will keep asking for more, and we will go to ask for more in terms of ease of doing business, in terms of cost of doing business. How do we bring it down? But these are the steps to be taken. All steps cannot be taken at one go. So I would say whatever we had asked for before the budget in terms of pre-budget recommendations, in terms of involving more power to the states. Now, a lot of our reforms, lot of our work will have to be done now at the state level. So, and there's a lot given to the states, as you know. So we will have to see others perform. It has to be a performance from everyone and implementation. And we will keep going back to say, implement, let's see implementation, let's see an action-oriented implementation plan as we go forward to actually realize this very good input that we have from the budget.
I'm also seeing, Chandrajit, that over the years, I've had in the last dozen odd years I've been presenting budgets, I've also seen industry, policymakers, especially in the Modi government, not expect some mega fireworks in the budget. In a way, I feel the government is delinked both the political process and the overall economic process from the budget. And I think that's good, because sometimes there's too much hype over one event, and too much is at stake. It's like, we almost get palpitations before the budget. Dr. Niranjan Hiranandani, you tweeted, I saw your tweet where you said, Budget 22 should arrest the slip in the ongoing recovery momentum in the wake of the fiscal prudence. You don't like fiscal prudence, is it, Dr. Hiranandani? And do you think the budget has met the expectation by reining in their fiscal deficit at 6.9? I have a nagging feeling you wanted the fiscal budget deficit to go over 7.5, at least.
Arnab, dil mange more. You have to understand that I am also, if my Prime Minister is ambitious and Arnab is ambitious, I am also ambitious for India. With the kind of background of the type of panel that you have here today, the power punch of each person who's been able to work through the economy in a different sort of way, I think we always expect much more. Each of the sectors of the economy. But the two best parts of the budget is the vision document, which is so pragmatic and working towards. I think that's a story which is, I think, beautiful. Number two, that this has not been a political budget.
Yes.
Can you imagine? The election is tomorrow and they have not bothered about it. They have focused on the fact that they have reached out to say, what is the vision document for the next 5 years and work diligent towards that? I think that is extremely important. Of course, the farmers are being taken care of, but they should have another thing. There are sectors not taken care of. I will point out, like the urban poor. I thought they were not taken care of, while Manrega has been taken care of. Urban poor has not been taken off. In the housing sector, a lot has been done. Because you're looking at the PMAY scheme, as Mr. Hardeep Puri is a favorite minister of mine. He has done a huge amount of work in the housing sector, and I had a good fortune to work with him very well, and he's done a fantastic job. But what about various small other things which are remaining? Like, for example, in Mumbai, 50% of my population live in Jhopatpatti. Yes, you might say state government, center government, it's okay. I'm not worried about it, not the political part of it. But we'd like to see that that part of the slums of Mumbai should also be cleared in the next couple of years, along with the other part of the economy. So while I agree with you and I agree with most of the people over here that this has been a very, very good and balanced budget and a forward-looking budget in many respects which have been there, the acceptance of the fact that you need to improve ease of doing business, Mr. Banerjee, I agree with you, because that has been recognized. And though they are saying ease of doing business is taken care of, but they have still agreed that land and construction related approvals of housing requires to be re-looked at in terms of it. So I think a lot of acceptance of the fact that improvement is still required to be done. But my view is the target should be 10% plus GDP growth if I want to achieve the target of the Prime Minister. So 8 point whatever it is not sufficient. I would like to hear from my other co-panelists, all of them who are so learned. How can we do 10% plus? That is something we should work and recommend to the Finance Minister and the Prime Minister, and the members on the panel are really worthy of the persons who can recommend such things.
Absolutely. I'd like Sohail to take on that. Sohail, this is exactly the point we were discussing this morning. There's somewhere this government has been able to de-link the process of running the country politically from running the country economically. And at the same time, it is looking forward. 5G era, technology, they put over 4% of the GDP as capex, and I think it's a remarkable thing that we got our own digital rupee, and using blockchain. When they were questioning crypto, then everyone says, oh, you don't understand blockchain, using blockchain and other technologies. So I think the point which Niranjan made, which I think is on Kamal, Rajneesh, Chandrajit Banerjee, and your mind as well, that this is interesting. Before an election which is make or break, 403 seats, Sohail, make or break. It's political war out there in Uttar Pradesh. And you had a budget which, makes you look like there's no election ever. There's no political impact of this as well. They're not seeking it. That's big, isn't it?
So what I love about Niranjan is his care and concern and empathy for the slum redevelopment program of Bombay, little knowing that some of his peers were the scoundrels and scamsters who continued to ruin that entire program and are now languishing, rightly so, in prison. So the good thing about the Modi government and now successive governments is that these crooks have no place to hide. So it's not only ease of doing business. If you're crooked in business, you will go to a place which is destined for you. Having said that, I have only three things to comment on, which is my delight factor. My delight factor is this is a budget with a strategy. And the underpinning of that strategy is only one word: digitization. What does digitization do? It creates equitable justice, it creates equanimity, and it creates transparency. All of which then add up to providing ease of business, providing greater trust, as even Niranjan and CV and Rajneesh and Kamal mentioned. It allows the wheels of industry to move swifter because, the plans have been laid out, the policy is clear, and there's predictability. What industry never likes is the unpredictable nature of our finance ministry. With all due respect, he has departed, but to my mind, what Pranab Mukherjee did with retrospective taxation put India behind by at least 30 to 40 years. I'm not even going to what he did with the banking sector. But that's for Amita Paul and Pranab Mukherjee to decide later. I mean, poor chap, the president is gone. Second, it's very important for industry to be aligned with the government. And Arnab, you rightly said, this budget is an economic policy map. It's an economic route map. The finance minister has shown great sagacity by not falling for the usual trap and the ease of falling for that trap because elections are around the corner.
Yeah.
The third thing, which is my disappointment, is that we talk about incredible India, but I'm incredibly sad today. We have done precious little for tourism. We've done precious little for the hospitality sector, and we have done even less for the employment generating capacity that tourism and hospitality have for both skilled and non-skilled. People love to invest in countries they like, that they are familiar with. We've got to have a more robust policy. You've seen the statement by the Indigo CEO, Ronojoy Datta, complaining and actually bemoaning the fact that not enough was done for the aviation industry. So I genuinely believe that Nirmala Sitharaman can't do everything at one time.
Yes, exactly.
And we shouldn't also expect the magic wand only to be, swung once a year. I believe that what Nirmala Sitharaman has told India and the world, this is a policy budget statement. It is a profit and loss account, but it is also a policy route map. This is where India is headed. In India at 75, India at 100, India at 150. Strategy is long-term. Tactics is short-term. What the Congress, sadly, and I don't mean to say this because Modi's in power, But the Congress was by and large tactical in nature, not only because they believed it was, prudent, but also because of their intellectual innocence largely at the top. I think this has changed. And I hope it continues to go this way.
Yeah, well, even then looking at budget in a standalone way is very significant. I'll now go across, ladies and gentlemen, to Amitabh Kant, who serves as the Chief Executive Officer of Niti Aayog. He has a studied perspective on the economic survey and the budget. And Mr. Kant, thank you for joining us. Arvind Kejriwal tweeted, he said, Corona काल में लोगों को बजट से बहुत उम्मीद थी. We had great expectations of the budget, the people. बजट ने लोगों को मायूस किया. It disappointed the people. आम जनता के लिए बजट में कुछ नहीं है. There is nothing in the budget for the general public. महंगाई कम करने के लिए कुछ नहीं है. Nothing to reduce inflation. Factually, isn't this accurate? At least the first part.
Arnab, the budget has to be seen in the context of last year's budget. It has to be seen in the context of many other policy measures, including national infrastructure pipeline, the PLI schemes, etc., which the government has drawn up. It's very important that India grows at rapid rates. The focus on capex expenditure this year really makes India grow rapidly at rates of 9 to 10% year after year for several years. The focus on sunrise sectors of growth makes you do that. Now, the important thing is when you grow at high rates, you are able to lift people above the poverty line. You are able to raise the middle class. If the country doesn't grow, poor people and middle class people cannot grow. You can't be dividing poverty. You can't be growing on the basis of doles. The country needs to grow on the basis of production and productivity, on the basis of infrastructure. That is the key. From 1941 to 1991, we have done everything what Mr. Kejriwal is talking about. India did not grow. It's the growth reforms and it's the focus on infrastructure which will make India grow. And therefore, my belief is that this budget is path-breaking. This budget is forward-looking. This budget looks at the future. And therefore, when you talk about artificial intelligence, when you talk about clean mobility, when you talk about battery swapping and genomics, etc., these are going to be the areas of the growth. In 2014, we had 2 mobile manufacturers. Today, we have 200 mobile manufacturers who are making in India and exporting to the rest of the world. We have become a major exporter of mobiles now. And that is what our plans are to do across a range of areas, from battery manufacturing to electric vehicle manufacturing to battery storage, etc. A whole range of cutting-edge areas. And therefore, the sunrise areas of growth, where the world is going to leap forward to, where the world is going to grow, are very critical for India in the next decade. India needs to grow year after year, year after year. That cannot be done on the basis of doles. It needs to be done on the basis of infrastructure, on the basis of manufacturing, on the basis of services sector growth, and that is what this budget aims at.
Why do you call it doles? Why do you call it SOPs? Why don't you call it incentives? And my counter question to you will be, how will there be a boost to consumption without tax relief? The finance minister says, and I quote, the public should not face any more pressure from income tax rates. But the criticism is there has been no tax relief, not even 1% for the common man. How will consumption be driven without tax relief?
Yeah. So let me first say that incentive is like the production-linked incentive scheme, that you are giving an incentive when you do more production. You keep increasing your production year after year for 5 years. And within those 5 years, for the production that you grow, you get 5% incentives. And you become global in size and scale. That's important. Number 2, on the tax side, we've already given a lot of incentive on the corporate tax side last year. It's not possible to keep giving tax concession to every segment of India's society. That's not important. That's a very sectoral view, and that's a very segmental view. The view that has to be taken is an all-India view. The Prime Minister understands today that the people of this country want growth, they want prosperity, they are willing to go that extra mile to ensure that India grows. And therefore, it's very important not to do tinkering of taxes, direct taxes, budget after budget after budget. And therefore, you need predictability and consistency of policies on the tax regime for a long period of time. And that is what has been done. Thirdly, to my mind, it's very, very important to understand that if once India grows, everybody benefits. If India doesn't grow, nobody benefits. And therefore, you need to make India grow. And then everybody will get jobs. You need to create jobs in this country. And for that to happen, you need to make the national infrastructure pipeline work. You need to bring in private sector for better management. So you need to make national asset monetization work. You need production-linked incentives so that you become global champions in those 14 sectors where you are putting all your resources in. That is the way for the country to move forward.
Well, you know, Amitabh, just stay a while, stay with that thought, and now I want to steer it in another direction with the panel. Amitabh, don't go away anywhere. Food for thought. Food for thought. Let me start with Kamal Bali. You know, I have a feeling out here that this government has now closed its ears to standard criticism, because standard criticism is political criticism. And the presentation of this government has been, you know, saffron-wearing government with a medieval process of operation, no connect with India, no understanding of the world, etc. But I think the government, at least in its economic thinking, has decided to close its ears to that and continue in what Suhail says is a strategic direction. You agree? So it's not responding to every political attack, you know. This whole, you know, everything that happened even after COVID. You know, the kind of criticism we saw, Chandrajit, you know, the government hasn't been responding to each. It's been just steadily moving on. So I think that's also a move in a different direction. What do you think? Let me take Kamal first, and then, okay, Chandrajit wants to go first. Yes, Chandrajit.
No. Thank you. I think you're absolutely right. You know, if you see one of the most important things that the government talked about was ease of living. Now, ease of living was touching whom? Ease of living was touching by getting water in my home where I never used to get in a village where I stayed. Ease of living came from where I saw that I get connected to the place of work through a proper road, and I reduce my time of going to that place of work by more than half. So, and this is benefiting whom? This is benefiting the poorest sections of the society. When you are creating job opportunities through the type of spending that we are seeing the government is doing and getting the private sector to come in, you are creating opportunities for people to participate in the economy. You are making their standards go up. You are getting job opportunities, incomes to go up. Who's benefiting from it? All of us are benefiting from it. The middle class is benefiting from it. The poorer sections of the society is benefiting from it. When you are getting technology to come into farming, drones, etc., who is benefiting from it? The farmer is benefiting from it. And so who's benefiting? The lowest strata of the society is. You just cannot do all of this just by giving tax concessions and tax. We need to, I mean, there should be many more people brought into the tax net. How many people are paying tax? So the tax net has to be horizon. I do not take this argument at all that consumption demand can be created.
My point was, isn't it refreshing when we began by saying that politics is dealing from economics to a large extent? But also there is, Kamal, Mr. Bali, I'd say, there is no day-to-day response coming either. Mr. Bali, Amitabh, just hear these reactions. Mr. Bali is the head of Volvo India. Would you agree with that assessment, Mr. Bali?
Yeah, I completely agree with Mr. Kant. I think Sohail and CB, I think without sounding biased, I think I personally feel that this government is clearly on a mission mode. I mean, and the Prime Minister is looking at India at 2047. And I think this government is not getting distracted by events en route. whether it's a UP election or something. So I think I feel that is absolutely clearly evident. And I think the realization that without creating wealth, and which, as Mr. Kant said, will happen only through structural changes and creating infrastructure, how will you distribute wealth without creating? I think if that fundamental logic can be clarified to everyone, I think we'll all work in that direction. I think without creating wealth, you cannot distribute. And for that, the only is development.
Also want to look at the geostrategic environment. Mr. Kant, I looked at the announcement on umbrellas, very interesting. I think it was not about umbrellas. It was a message to China. We don't need your umbrellas, neither do we need the components of the umbrellas. There was a messaging there. Broadly speaking, I mean, of course, this is not a foreign policy statement, it's a budget. But I think there's a larger message being sent, you know, in terms of what we can do at home.
Absolutely.
So, Arnab, one very important thing is the lesson to be derived from what we've done in mobile manufacturing. In 2014, there were just 2 manufacturers of mobile. Today, we have 200 manufacturers of mobile. Apple and Samsung have put up some of their biggest manufacturing here. And we are today not only catering to the domestic requirement of less than $200 phones, but we are exporting in a very big way the cutting edge phones which are being made across the world. What we have done in mobiles, we are trying to replicate that story in battery storage, in solar PV, and in battery, in a whole range of other areas, because if we do not do that, we will become a major importing nation as we had done in mobiles. And it's very important to drive this, that the production-linked incentive scheme is really aimed at making global champions from India using the strength of the domestic market, which can then penetrate global markets. So the whole intention is that within a period of 5 years, and there is a sunset clause after 5 years, within a period of 5 years, these companies in the PLI sector must become global champions and become size and scale to penetrate global markets. And that is our aim. Our aim is to replicate that story. And that can only be done if we use technology, if we leapfrog, and if we get into the sunrise areas of growth. In the past, we used to get into the sunset areas of growth, and it used to be too late. Today, this year, the value of mobile phones sold is more than the value of cars sold in the world. So the world is moving to new areas of growth, and that is what this country has looked at. That is what this budget has looked at. It has looked at clean mobility, it has looked at battery storage, it has looked at genomics, it has looked at artificial intelligence to give you that quantum jump forward for the next decade.
I must stop. I must stop Amitabh in his evangelistical approach, which is fine.
Evangelistical.
Everything is fine, you know, mobility, genomics, blah, blah, blah. Artificial intelligence, but what will you do with native stupidity? Having said that, you, Amitabh, more than anyone else, knows the value to a nation of tourism and hospitality.
Sohail.
You are the CEO of Niti Aayog. You're the planning czar of India. Why has tourism and hospitality been ignored in this budget? Why have we not done anything for the aviation sector? I have nothing to do with them. Nothing. So please, there's no angle here. Number 2, you understand that if people love the countries that they see, they want to invest in them. What is your view? Are you seriously in agreement with the silence of the budget on tourism and hospitality? Forget the public servant.
So we've got limited time, so let Amitabh respond, and then a couple of quick ones from me. Yeah.
Let me clarify. Sohail is off the mark on this one. The budget has provided the increased outlay provided for the MSME sector for the credit guarantee scheme, the additional allocation of 50,000 crore. The finance minister is on record today that it is for the MSME, hospitality sector.
No, added credit line for the hospitality sector.
No, there's nothing for the hospitality sector.
MSME,
absolutely. He said MSME.
It is for. No. The additionality is for the hospitality sector in that scheme. Read that line carefully. It's very important to understand that there was, at the peak of the pandemic, whatever you could have done for the tourism industry would not have had any impact. You should have waited for the impact of the pandemic to get over so that tourism can flourish. The domestic tourism was given a boost in the midst of the pandemic, and now the hospitality sector has been given a relief through this credit guarantee scheme.
Since this is such a lovely conversation, I can't but take the opportunity to ask the ever-gracious Amitabh Kant to take a couple of points from our other two panelists. Niranjan Hiranandani is with us, and we have Rajneesh Kumar, former chairman SBI and chairman of Bharat Pay, also with us. I take it to Rajneesh Kumar first. You know, I'm a bit confused. What is a virtual digital asset? What is the real status of cryptos? You know, what is the real status of cryptos? Is it a highly taxed thing, or is it an illegal thing?
No,
we thought the government was going to make it an illegal thing.
No. Let me explain it to it that anything about digital,
Arnab,
either it can be a currency or a commodity or an asset. So in this budget, it has been clarified that it is not a currency and it is not a commodity, it is an asset. And when you deal in the asset, if you make a profit, you pay tax at 30%.
Okay, I'll give
the identity purpose, TDS of 1%.
Okay, any question that Niranjan you have, overall comment on which I can get a reaction from Amitabh as well, before I close this segment.
No, Arnab, let me clarify. Let me clarify this digital asset issue very clearly. What has been done in the budget is to treat cryptos like an asset class, like you treat gold, you treat mutual funds, you treat bonds.
Okay.
What the government has done is that it's not banned cryptos. It's said that because if you ban cryptos in the world of internet today, it will lead to flight of capital, it will lead to flight of skilled manpower, and there has to be it is a global challenge. And therefore, what the government has said is for people, crypto exchanges, etc., those who do in cryptos, there'll be a 1% turnover tax and there'll be a 30% capital gain tax. The second announcement relates to the currency bit, that India will have a digital currency which will be rolled out by the RBI, and India will be one of the first few countries to go digital as far as its currency is concerned, which is a very progressive step forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Niranjan, I'm so sorry. I've totally run short of time in this segment. I would have loved to come to you, but I thank you all. This has been a very interesting, illuminating chat, ladies and gentlemen. Now, what do we do without the politics? When I come back on the other side, two more cabinet ministers joining me and a big political debate. That's at 9. So let's get ready to debate.